Blog Talk Radio, the world's largest online radio network.
Welcome to Week 5 of FantasyGuru.com Sunday Night Wrap-Up Podcast. Kelly, John Hansen here with you another Sunday night, taking you around the NFL, breaking down all of today's games. And John, off the air here, you mentioned not exactly the best week we've seen so far, and you know, we learn a little bit every week. You know, we think we know certain things. We always learn something new as well, and you know, week number 5, no different.
Yeah, no question. Wasn't a great week at all. I believe I used a curse word off the air when describing the week. We'll refrain from that here on the podcast, Paul. But yeah, it's a good point. We always learn some things. Sometimes we learn that we just never know, and that's unfortunate. But we do learn some things, and we move onward and upward. What else can we do? We're going to roll with what works at this point. We're through 5 weeks. A guy like Pierre Garçon, I've been kind of pushing him simply because I saw a lot of upside potential, but right now it's not happening for him. So he's a guy that you may want to sit down on your bench. But this week here was pretty typical. Unfortunately, what happens is the deeper we go into the season, sometimes the harder it gets because the injuries kind of mount up, and more players are kind of in and out of lineups and things like that. So unfortunately, and then sometimes the defenses are up and down. Sometimes it does get a little harder as we move along. I sense that that's what's happening here because the last couple of years I've noticed the first 2-3 weeks I'm like, wow, this is pretty good. We're gonna do this all year. No, we're not, because again, the injuries are the big one. They mount up, and then it becomes a little bit more of a week-to-week league.
Yeah, and certainly defenses, you know, they've got access to tape now, you know, as you get deeper into the season, and certainly they can game plan to take certain players out of the ball game, and I think we're seeing a bit of that in week number 5. Let's go ahead and begin.
And the defenses, Paul, are a lot better this year. I mean, you know, I was talking about this on the radio. You know, Arizona's D is really good. St. Louis's D is really good. Miami, really good. The Bengals coming on a little bit here. Finally, Kansas City had a decent showing last week. Seattle, they're nasty. Chicago's D is really good. Minnesota is a D that's really playing well right now. Denver, they're up and down, but they've had some good moments here. But so a lot of really tough defenses out there in the NFL right now.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that Miami defense. They are for real, and they won today in Cincinnati, 17-13. Let's start with the Bengals side of the ball, and somebody that you know you can count on week in, week out. A.J. Green catches 9 balls for 65 and a touchdown. He has scored 4 weeks in a row. Dalton threw it 43 times here, but just 234 yards and the 1 TD. He had been very productive heading into this game, but just the 1 score today.
Yeah, and you got to give the credit to Miami Dolphins. I liked Dalton today, and I thought for sure that they would not run the ball, and that's one of the reasons I liked him. And he did throw it 43 times. Based on the way he's been playing, he should have thrown for about 300 with 2 touchdowns. But this is a case, Paul, where we're totally giving credit to the defense because Miami, as you mentioned, they're for real. They've got a pretty good pass rush. They're great against the run. This is a damn good defense. Time to give Mr. Wanstead some credit down there because he's doing a really good job. Green does come through, doesn't get a lot of yards, though, which is, again, a testament to the defense. I really like Gresham today. You know, he had a good game, actually.
Yeah.
5 grabs for 60. I guess people's expectations are a little bit high, but I think, look, I've been talking about this on the radio a lot. I know some people are pissed off at us for backing Jermaine Gresham. You look at the last 3 weeks. This is the Gresham right here. I mean, what he gets every week. He gets like 4 or 5 catches, 50, 60 yards, and he scores every other week. This is exactly what we thought he'd be. And I'm a big body language guy, Paul. Mr. Caplan makes fun of me about it all the time. But the body language with Gresham was horrendous the first 2 weeks. Yep. What do I attribute to? He had a preseason knee injury, and I don't think he was fully recovered those first 2 weeks, fully confident in the knee, and now he's good to go. So I think, you know, he's not the greatest starter out there, but he's pretty solid.
This game did not set up well for Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. Just 9 carries, 14 yards on the day. Really the first game this year that he hasn't been worth using for fantasy. Bernard Scott was getting some meaningful carries early, 5 for 40, but he ended up getting hurt in this game, John.
He did, I know, and they need some juice at running back because Ben Jarvis, obviously, it's just you think he's a good sustainer and the O-line's pretty good, but it's just not happening right now, and they need someone. And Scott looked like he was popping off a couple of runs. He had a 29-yarder, but as you mentioned, he got injured, so we don't have an update on that. We'll have to see. He could still be worth picking up if there's absolute garbage on your waiver wire. Andrew Hawkins, I know you'll bring it up, but he did have 13 targets, just missed a touchdown in the game, so he continues to be viable. And Armand Benz does get red zone passes, 2 last week, and he had 1 again this week.
For the Miami Dolphins, Reggie Bush carries 19 times in the game, just 48 yards, but he does score. And I know you wrote it up this morning in your Hansen hints. Reggie Bush, it's amazing how good he has looked this year. And even in a game where he really couldn't get it going, he does come through for fantasy with that touchdown.
He looked good on that damn touchdown, I'll tell you that. But he does say that the knee's still bothering him a little bit. And the other little disconcerting fact, he did have a nice 21-yard catch finally, but they don't use him in the passing game. It's weird. He's like their feature back, and that's it. But Daniel Thomas continues to get vulture opportunities. They do have Javorsky Lane, Ron Javorsky Lane. They still have him on the roster. And it's like if they're like on the one, they'll probably roll with him because he's like a tank. But Daniel Thomas does get meaningful goal line opportunities, and he did score today.
Brian Hartline blew up last week. A lot of people using him as a third receiver or flex option this week. Catches 4 for 59, which before this season, John, that's kind of the guy that he was every week.
Yeah, but look at the targets, though. Only 5, and that's the weird thing. So, I mean, for him to get 4 for 59 on 5 targets is pretty damn good. I think if the targets most weeks are going to be around 10, that bumps it up to like 6 to 90. So I still start him every week. He had a really nice 30-yard catch down the sideline. And how about that Ryan Tannehill? This kid, wow, he has got it going on here. He is the anti-Blaine Gabbert. I'll tell you that right now. That kid will stand tall in the pocket and fire that ball. I love me some Ryan Tannehill.
Fantastic finish in Indianapolis today as the Colts beat the Packers 30-27. And for the Colts, what can you say about Reggie Wayne? And today was a day for the older guys. Reggie Wayne blew up. Tony Gonzalez, who we'll get to later, had a great game today. But Reggie Wayne, 13 catches, 212 yards, and the game-winning score. I mean, in a PPR, in a non-PPR, this guy is just getting it done. And Andrew Luck throws the ball 55 times in this game. He's going to throw it a lot pretty much every week because they don't run it very well. Reggie Wayne is a rock-solid guy right now, John.
Oh, he is an absolute stud. What a brilliant performance by Reginald Wayne in this game, and Andrew Luck too. It was something to behold. I think he iced the Hall of Fame acceptance from this season because he's been playing some of his best football ever. It's fantastic, and I hope that a lot of our subscribers got him because we were pretty damn high on Reginald Wayne this year. I know we had him in the top 20 at receiver, especially in a PPR league. That's pretty high for a guy his age with a rookie quarterback. So I felt really good about Reggie Wayne once I saw him in the preseason. I do hope that we pushed him hard enough, which we did push him pretty damn hard. I hope a lot of our listeners and readers got him because, man, he has just been absolute money, and it's fantastic. Now, the downside to this for Andrew Luck, and look, he's getting it done, no question, they just don't have anyone else in the passing attack. Getting a lot of targets the last couple of weeks to Donnie Avery, not completing the passes, so that's not a great sign. T.Y. Hilton, the rookie, flash player, 9 targets, only 3 catches, not a great sign. Now, Kobe Fleener, maybe this is something here to pick up if you're dying because they need some help in the middle of the field, for one, and they just need a second option in the passing game. I know Dwayne Allen's still involved, though. That's kind of a problem. He did score, and he looked good. But Kobe Fleener may be the guy, obviously, the connection with Andrew Luck. But Luck, the final thought on Luck, boy, he is, and you know this, Paul, watching, he is not afraid to stick it in a very tight window. I mean, really tight. And a lot of people say that's a negative, and he will throw his picks, but I kind of view it as a positive as a rookie. He is just not afraid to make what throws that some quarterbacks would be afraid to even attempt. So that's a great sign in my eyes.
Yeah, Andrew Luck, 300 or more yards in 3 of his 4 starts so far in the NFL. Ran for a score today. Now, John, a lot of people drafted him as their backup. So, I mean, if you're sitting there with, with a Cam Newton and an Andrew Luck, or Michael Vick and Andrew Luck, I mean, are you comfortable moving forward with Luck as your QB1?
I think there's no reason not to at this point. I mean, we are more than a quarter way through the season here. Granted, they had a bye week already, but let's see where we ranked him for the season last week, because I think he might have cracked the top 12. 13, 13 right behind Flacco. So Flacco, Stafford, Romo, Big Ben, Manning, Cam, Eli, Griffin, who got injured. We'll talk about that. Matt Ryan, Brady, Rodgers, Breeze. I think you could make the case that he's a little bit better maybe than a Romo, or I don't know about Cam. I mean, we'll get to that. That was a bad showing there. But, he's right in the mix there. He is totally in the mix.
For the Packers, Aaron Rodgers throws for 243 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. But, boy, John, the Packers, they're kind of like a walking wounded right now. Greg Jennings didn't play in this game. Benson left with an injury. Finley left with an injury. So they're hurting right now on offense.
Yeah, and the O-line's not very good. It's kind of ugly here for the Green Bay Packers. They got sacked. Rodgers got sacked a ton of times here. I'm going to call that up, how many times he got sacked. But the pass protection problems are bad. No Jennings is bad. Finley getting hurt. Again, it's pretty ugly right now for the Green Bay Packers. And they've been off all year. It's a little surreal here. Maybe one guy that, I don't even want to say could help them, because we're just not sure about what Alex Green can give them. But if Sed Benson is hurt, certainly Alex Green is worth a look on the waiver wire. And I've been pimping him up, mainly almost entirely for keeper leagues. We ranked him at like 48 for the preseason. So we weren't certainly all in on him for this year, especially once I got Benson, once I kind of saw what they were going to do. But they drafted him for a reason. He is a pretty decent hurry-up back. He's got some power. He's got a lot more speed and explosiveness. He did pop off a 41-yard run here, Paul. So, and again, in leagues where there's really nothing on the waiver wire, he's a pickup this week, but we will see about Benson.
Yeah, and of course the Packers deep at receivers. You've got Randall Cobb, who stepped up with 4 for 82 and a touchdown today. James Jones, 4 for 46 and 2 scores in this game. But the guy who's been really a disappointment this year, based on the 15 touchdowns last year, has to be Jordy Nelson.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with their protection issues, because he's been a downfield guy, and they just it's not clicking really that much, the downfield throws. Now in this game I just watched. There was an opportunity for a big play, and I think I don't have coach's tape. Obviously, I'm watching it live. I'm pretty sure if Rodgers connected down the right sideline, that it could have been a long touchdown. We may not be having this conversation. So that said, and I know he's been killing people, and maybe he's not as good as what he showed last year. Probably not, especially with 15 touchdowns. That was a little fluky. Would he get 3 of them in week 16? Boy, he's a good buy low candidate. I mean, I'd have no problems if I got him and plugged him in as my number 3. In that role, you can just suck it up, and, you're not going to do it every week, but when he pops, it pop nicely for you.
Baltimore at Kansas City. This was an ugly game. 9-6 is your final score. Let's start with the Ravens and Joe Flacco, who first quarterback all year who hasn't thrown at least 2 touchdown passes against the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs defense looked better today. Flacco just 187 yards, no TDs, so it was a quiet day for his receivers. Ray Rice touched the ball 18 times for 118 yards, but again, no touchdowns today for the Ravens.
Yeah, big-time disappointment. If you started Flacco, it was the right move to make. There's little question about that. Kansas City had not been very good at home. They kicked it up a notch. They got Brandon Flowers back, and their secondary was better. Their pass rush was better. They played well on defense. You got to give them a lot of credit. And certainly this is a little bit of a crushing blow to Flacco people who felt like they could use him every week. But I wouldn't panic. It's certainly not a great sign, though, because it seems like whenever they're challenged by a defense, they're betting they're like 50-50 on it, which isn't a great sign. So certainly maybe you need to reevaluate things a little bit with Flacco. Maybe a little bit more of a matchup guy. Bolden did have a decent game. Torrey Smith, I knew they were going to try and take away the deep ball. I guess they did that. And then Dennis Pitta is kind of fallen off the grid here. So I don't know if we're back to square one with the Ravens. I don't want to go that far, but this was a little disconcerting that they were challenged by, look, they're all professionals out there, but they were challenged by a defense that's been pretty bad this year.
Dennis Pitta, 18 catches in the first 3 games. He's got just 3 the last 2 weeks combined. As we move it over to Kansas City, third really big game in a row here for Jamal Charles, who touched the ball 33 times today, 161 total yards. Didn't score in the game, but clearly this guy can handle a very heavy workload, John. 33 touches in the game.
It's as if they were starting Joe Dolan, FantasyGuru.com senior writer at quarterback, and they didn't want him to throw any passes, and that's clearly what it was, Paul. They ran it. If you include Castle, 50. If you include Castle's 4 rushing attempts, Cyrus Gray, the rookie, even got out there a little bit, had a catch, 4 carries. John's not bad. He kind of moves a little bit better than I thought. But obviously it's all Charles. 30 carries, for God's sake. So there you go. You're starting Jamal Charles every single week. Dwayne Bowe, by the way, had a touchdown taken off the board. It was pass interference, but I'm not sure it was on the play. He did have a touchdown taken off the board, though. So you're starting him every week. But otherwise, I've been pushing Jonathan Ball a little bit. This is what we do here. We see a guy with an opportunity and with talent. We're going to be all over it every time. We're going to do that this year. We're going to do it next year. Every damn year we're going to do it. But, at some point, and right now I'm about waving it with Baldwin for now because the quarterback play, obviously, not very good. Not a lot of opportunities when they're running it 50 times. So Baldwin's not really relevant right now.
Crazy, yeah, 50 runs, just 18 passes. Now, any concern at all with Dwayne Bowe? It seemed like as soon as Matt Castle threw that first INT, they completely shut down the passing game and decided, you know what, we're just going to run the rest of the game, and whatever happens, happens. Yep. Moving forward, Castle got hurt in this game, Brady Quinn came in, but moving forward, is that a concern with this offense that they're just not going to open it up?
Yeah, it is a concern, especially because we'd like to see the defense continue to suck for fantasy because he's been the king of garbage time production. What I'll say is this. I would continue to start him, but I wouldn't call him an untouchable. So, given this concern, I'd say, it's viable if you want to trade him. If I knew it was going to be Castle all year and the defense was going to be bad and he was going to get 12, 14 targets every week, I'd almost call him an untouchable. Because the guy is a really good receiver. This guy is always making plays. He's seemingly unstoppable. So otherwise, I'd suck it up and just keep rolling with him. But given these concerns that we've just outlined here, he's not an untouchable guy. You can consider trading him. And by the way, they could essentially pull the plug on Castle, and that probably wouldn't be a good thing for Bowe either, which is another concern.
New York Giants got a scare today in the Meadowlands, but ended up taking care of this one, 41-27 over the Cleveland Browns. Let's start with the Giants on offense, and probably one of the more quiet 200-yard rushing days you're ever going to hear about. Ahmad Bradshaw, 30 carries in this game for 200 and a touchdown. And, Andre Brown had to leave this game. Head injury that gave David Wilson an opportunity. He did bust off that 40-yard touchdown run. So showing that he's got that kind of talent, John. We know that. But will he get more opportunities in this offense?
Boy, geez, you got to think about it. You got to think that he will, and it's always a tough call because obviously we pushed David Wilson as a great mid-round guy for upside for the whole season, and we all know what happened, blah blah blah. And people send tweets all the time. Should I cut him? Well, I don't know. If the best running back available in your league is Javorsky Lane, then probably not because obviously the plan. And this is a fact, we're not making this stuff up, the plan was to give him a very active role alongside Ahmad Bradshaw with like 10, 12 touches, real nice change of pace, big-time speed. Paul, you saw the touchdown run. He was shot out of a cannon on that run. The kid is very talented. So I think, obviously, look, let's just call him for now a stash and hope guy, but I wouldn't be surprised at all because Bradshaw, who's convinced that Bradshaw is going to make it? Keep in mind, we're in early October here. He's already missed a game. Where are we going to be in December? I don't know. I'm not convinced that Bradshaw can stay on the field. Neither can Andre Brown. Let's keep in mind, he's looked good, but the dude was cut 7 times. A lot of injuries with him, too. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if, November, December, we're looking at David Wilson getting 10 touches a game, and he can do a lot with those.
Eli Manning, 259 yards, 3 touchdowns in the game, all to Victor Cruz. This Giant receiving core, John, very, very deep. I mean, you've got Nix, who didn't play in this game, but then you've got Cruz, you've got Dominic Hickson, you've got Ramses Barden, who stepped up a couple of weeks ago. Today it was Randall catching 6 for 82.
Yeah, that's a good point. I tweeted that in the preseason when Dominic Hickson was coming on. I was like, wow, all of a sudden the Giants are really deep at receiver, and a little bit of a disappointment with Hickson because we certainly liked him. And this is why. Somebody sent me a tweet saying, oh, I'm surprised you're not higher on Hickson because we had him at like 29, and this is why. Because when you have a player whose role is a little unsettled, he's not cemented in an offense, you just never know. That's why we only ranked him at 29. Of course, I wish we ranked him lower now because Ruben Randall, I don't know what his role is right now. I got to watch the game because I didn't see it all, but he looked really good from what I saw. He looked very good. Really talented guy, and he did lead him in targets with 9, 6 for 82. So it's a little bit of it's a little murky right now, the situation behind Akeem Nicks, and who knows when he'll return.
For the Cleveland Browns, Trent Richardson got his touchdown early, finished with 17 carries, 81 yards on the day. 5 catches for 47, very encouraging, John. He does have 20 receptions through the first 5 games.
Oh, fantastic, yeah. It's such a shame that he had that. I'm so pissed off that he had that knee because, look, we had him high. We had him as a player to target. We gave him plenty of love. If he didn't have that injury, it would have been nuts. I mean, we had him at like 5 or something going into the preseason, and this is why. And clearly he's good enough to do it on a shaky team. And, the Browns aren't that bad. Their offensive line's pretty good, and Brandon Whedon is looking strong here. Granted, I don't have a lot of confidence overall in the offense, but we did kind of talk about it a lot this summer that they had some pieces to work with. And Richardson, again, he's tremendous. I tweeted today, Paul, he may be a top 3 pick in fantasy next year.
Talk about Josh Gordon, who stepped it up with 2 receptions in this game, both for lengthy touchdowns. And, Greg Little, not a factor in this game today. Is Gordon a guy that as the season wears on could become relevant for fantasy?
Well, you would think that he is a nice pickup this week for sure. I'm not totally sold just yet. We kind of covered this. I covered it. I updated the waiver wire on Saturday. I added him, and I said, look, he's going to get a real chance this week. He's got upside. Hard to go all in on him. I think we gave him like 50 yards because what did he have, 2 catches going into the game? Very raw still. But I did mention in the waiver wire that, the commentary, and we had it in our Friday news and notes too, the commentary from him this week that he feels a lot more comfortable. I think he's got a little chemistry there with Brandon Whedon. And ultimately, the main reason to get behind him, other than the fact that they're searching here, my number one rule when looking at potential receivers, if a team doesn't have a number 1 receiver or a go-to guy, they will try to find one. And early it was Mohamed Massaquoi, a little bit of Greg Little, then the drops came with Little, the injury with Massaquoi. Right now they're going to give a chance maybe to Josh Gordon, 8 targets. Granted, he only caught 2 of them, so again, he's still raw. But the kid has got elite physical tools, and we saw that he can make plays. So in deep leagues, I'd absolutely pick him up, see what you see.
Don't want to spend too much time on the Browns here, but Jordan Norwood caught 9 passes for 81 yards in this game. Is he somebody to look at?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I know they like Travis Benjamin. That was really at the expense of Greg Little. I thought Greg Little would get some catches today. Obviously, the drops are a problem, but he did have a decent game last week, so I figured, okay, they didn't really have the choice and, pretty good matchup, and seemingly they all went to Norwood. I probably need to see one more week from him, more of a slot guy, but they are throwing a little bit more than I'm sure they want to, and Whedon, tell you, Whedon looks pretty good here. When you look at these low-end quarterbacks, he looks like a professional. He's kind of standing out here, Paul.
Tight game in Pittsburgh today as the Steelers beat the Eagles 16-14. Rashard Mendenhall making his season debut with 14 carries, 81 yards, and a score on the day. Also caught a couple of balls for another 20 yards. Looked pretty good in this game, John. And, moving forward, flex guy or RB2, what are we thinking about Mendenhall?
Ideally, I think at flex because they're ultimately still, A, going to throw it plenty, and B, I think they're clearly already, we knew this was coming. We kind of outlined this totally, that they're ready to just go right back to the template from last year, and that includes Isaac Redmond getting meaningful carries behind Mendenhall. So certainly he's not a horrible number 2. But ideally, if you're rolling with him as your flex, you're good to go there because he may not do it every week, probably won't do it every week, but he did look good, and they clearly need to run the football. So you should be good for 15 carries a game. I'd say 15 every week, 1 or 2 targets. They don't give him a ton of targets. Of course, it's a new scheme here and a new coach with Tal Haley, so we'll see. He did get 3 in this game, which wasn't too bad because he has something to offer. 2 for 20 catching passes out of the backfield.
Not a great day for Roethlisberger, just throws for 207, no scores. Clearly it was more of an Antonio Brown kind of day. 7 catches, 86 yards, compared to Mike Wallace, who caught just 2 for 17.
Yep, yeah, Wallace did just miss a touchdown, though, in the game, but that's a little strange here for Mike Wallace. I would imagine now that they're going to be able to run the ball a little bit, Mike Wallace will start heating up. In fact, I think he's a really nice, believe me, he's going to be in the Trade Low article right now because it's not like the dude forgot how to run. And I think he'll be okay, but clearly it's once again our guy Antonio Brown, who we loved in the preseason, just missed a touchdown too. Oh man, did he just miss it? He would have had, Paul. He would have had like 8 catches for like 120 yards and a touch, and he just missed it. He couldn't finish the catch.
Quiet day for the Eagles on offense. Michael Vick throws for 175. 2 touchdowns, at least they went to 2 guys you're probably using. LaShawn McCoy and Brent Selleck caught his first TD of the year. But overall, offense kind of disjointed, having trouble sustaining drives. What are you seeing out of them right now?
Yeah, it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. And once again, I mean, I forget where I complain about these things, and I don't know if I did on the podcast or on the radio, but again, you either, to me, for the Eagles, maybe I'm off base here. I'm not studying film and all that, but it's just an observation. If you really want to win every week, if you want to win, it's hard to win in the NFL, obviously, against anyone. It's got to be McCoy getting 20 carries, and it's got to be Brent Selleck getting a ton of targets. At the very least, one or the other, because these guys on the outside, Jackson's playing well, but it's just not happening for these big plays like we're used to seeing here, and you got to run the ball because Vic needs to be managed at this point, and Selleck is a really nice intermediate safety valve, and we've seen it over the last 2-3 weeks. When one of those things happens or both, they win. If they both don't happen, and I would qualify that as not happening here with McCoy only 16 carries, that's not enough. It's not enough. And Selleck, granted, he only had 3 catches for 9 yards. One of them was a touchdown, but that's not much from those 2, and they lose.
The Atlanta Falcons move to 5-0 on the year as they win in Washington 24-17. For the Redskins, RG3 gets injured in this game, knocked out with a concussion. He did tweet later on after the game that he felt fine, thought he'd be ready to go next week, but of course there's a whole battery of tests that he's going to have to pass before we get to that point. But I think you tweeted about it earlier. You wonder how long can he sustain his health playing the way that he plays the game.
Yeah, he does. He takes on some really vicious hits from some big men. I mean, these guys are so much bigger than him, and it really is scary. He got hit. I saw it live, and he kind of popped his head up. You could sense that he was like, "Oh, I'm okay," and then it just plopped right down. So, oh boy, not good, not good. So now we got to worry about injuries, as you mentioned in his tweet. He said he's going to play. But it's time to pull back from him. He didn't have a lot of success running in this game before he got hurt. He only had 1 attempt, and that's a good, not great defense on the other side in Atlanta. So good news for Alfred Morris, though. If you have Alfred Morris, this guy is the guy, obviously, and he's going to get, mark it down, Paul. He's going to get 20 carries a week going forward.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't run for less than 78 yards in a game yet. He's been incredibly consistent. Certainly one of the big stories so far for fantasy this season. As far as these receivers go, though, I mean, what do you do? I mean, Pierre Garçon, you mentioned it at the top of the broadcast, a guy that you're excited about based on his preseason performance, based on his week 1, based on the fact that there's not a whole lot else here, but clearly he's still trying to come back from that injury.
Yeah, it's still bothering him. He had, a play. He had a nice, 20-yard catch, I think, that was overturned. But they're still kind of searching here. And I thought Leonard Hankerson was going to be the guy, but he didn't start today. Let me look that up. They started Josh Morgan. Of course, Morgan got what? Nothing, right? I mean, he didn't do hardly anything. Did he
1
get
for 4?
Target? Yeah, 1 target. And Hankerson only got 1 target. So. And then Moss is in the mix, so it's pretty much a disaster right now. It's hard to trust anyone. Fred Davis he's been steady here 3 weeks in a row, so he's viable. PPR will probably get you 4 or 5 catches most weeks, but wide receiver, it's pretty treacherous here. I wouldn't want to consider anyone other than Garcon, and even Garcon's a guy, unless we get really good reports from him in practice that the foot's feeling a lot better, and of course if RG3's under center, you probably want to bench Garcon at this point.
For the Falcons, Matt Ryan continues to produce for fantasy through 52 passes in this game for 345 yards, 2 more touchdowns. He's averaging over 300 yards passing per week through the first 5 games. And what can you say about Tony Gonzalez? 13 catches for 123 and a touchdown, and probably off to his best start ever, which is ridiculous considering the guy's a Hall of Famer and he's 36 years old, but he is getting it done every single week, John.
I know, it's incredible. I mean, we actually listed him as a value this year. I wish we really pumped him up, and he was on our players to target values article simply because he was a value. I mean, guy wasn't getting much love, and I think we ranked him pretty high. But geez, this is crazy. It's just amazing. You got to love Dirk Cutter, man. That guy loves to throw that football. The new offensive coordinator this year, and Gonzalez is just. I mean, there's no reason to ask a lineup question relating to Tony Gonzalez. The question is, should I start Tony Gonzalez? The answer is always yes. I mean, he's killing someone like Gates, for example. Gates is, I don't know what the heck's going on here.
Yeah.
As we record this Sunday night, just dropped a touchdown earlier in the game. But how about Julio? Certainly that's a great sign. A little bit more than a deep threat. He 15 targets is obviously great news, and I don't know if it was a function of the defense is trying to put the clamps down on Roddy White or what, or just getting Julio going here, but I saw somebody on the message board call him a bust. Well, he does have 4 touchdowns here as we close out Week 5. So what's that a pace for? Like, I don't know, a lot, double-digit touchdowns. So
yeah.
He's not a bust. I think he's had 3 good games and 2 bad games. So that's not a bust, and certainly a good sign with all the targets.
Yeah, and just when you think that Michael Turner is beginning to go away and maybe Jacquizz Rodgers is going to become more and more involved, this game is certainly more about Turner. 18 carries, 67 yards, and a touchdown, caught a couple of passes, just 2 yards. But so far on the season, John, Turner's got 80 touches and 4 touchdowns. Rodgers has 41 touches and just 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I don't think Jacquizz Rodgers is that great. I think it's time to say that this guy is a scat back type. He's not going to break a lot of tackles. He's a small guy. He's not exactly a strong guy. They're not utilizing enough in the passing attack. I think we all got a little too excited. And maybe they're adjusting here on the fly because the first couple of weeks we were like, okay, Turner's dead. But yeah. I think now they're I think resigned is probably the worst word. But I think now they're settling into something of a combination of an up-tempo, pass-oriented attack while maintaining their power-rushing roots with Turner, and it's probably good that they are such a downfield passing attack because fewer stacked boxes for Turner. He was bottled up in this game other than a touchdown, but he did get it done. So that's the bottom line. You're probably rolling with Turner going forward and feeling pretty good about it.
Big win on the road today for the Seahawks in Carolina, 16-12. Russell Wilson, who you're probably not using for fantasy, completed 19 of 25 passes in this game for 221 and a touch, did turn it over a couple of times, but as usual, the offense all about Marshawn Lynch. 21 more carries in this game for 85 yards. Didn't score, but he is averaging over 100 yards per game rushing the football, John.
Yeah, surprised he didn't score, but got to give some credit to Carolina. They played a little bit better on defense lately. I guess Sidney Rice is the only. I actually wrote in the waiver wire last week. I wouldn't be surprised if Golden Tate reemerged this week and he scored, of course. But you can't trust Golden Tate. He is the classic example of a guy that just when you think he's worthless, he scores, and just when you think, okay, he's viable, he kills you. I mean, it's classic, this guy. So Sidney Rice would be the only one to look at. He is your prototypical number one receiver, led the team in targets the last couple of weeks. He is healthy, and that's usually a huge plus for him because he's rarely healthy. Russell Wilson, good performance, certainly relatively efficient other than those 2 picks. He did throw a pick 6. The Captain Munnerling of all people, but once again, you can't trust them. There's not much going on here in Seattle other than Lynch and their defense.
Yeah, wasn't a whole lot going on for the Panthers today either. Ugly day on offense. Cam Newton completed just 12 of his 29 pass attempts for 141 yards, no TDs. He has only 4 passing touchdowns through the first 5 games of the year. He hardly looks like the same player last year. I mean, here's a guy who threw for over 4,000 yards last year, and he's having trouble getting the ball to Steve Smith, who has not scored yet this season.
Yeah, it's weird. You know, he was, believe it or not, going into this week, Paul, he was 4th in scoring at quarterback.
Wow.
And that's all the running. I mean, that's it. I mean, that's why we're going to continue to advocate him and back him. I mean, look, we're doing the projections. I'm doing them. And how do I not give the guy, at this point, all you want from Newton, just give me 215 passing and a touch. And that's not too much to ask for a guy who threw 4,000 yards last year. But maybe it is against a good defense. And we were obviously very concerned about this matchup. And we downgraded him somewhat. So accordingly, I think we had him at like 9. And that's relatively low for a guy who runs. But he did play well last week. So there was some confidence, especially in Carolina. But this was a terrible showing, and you gotta wonder about implosion here a little bit, because he is a little bit of a whiner and a sulker. Steve Smith's a hothead. I do get the sense that Smith can't stand him, quite frankly, and that's a little bit of a problem. And the approach is just, I don't know what they're doing there, and I don't know if they'll change midstream here, but it's obvious that they're all about Newton. They're going to win and die with Newton. And right now they're dying more than they're winning. So you got these running backs here. I don't know if they'll ever run them, but you got them. D'Angelo Williams, Jonathan Stewart. It would make sense to me, Paul. Make a commitment to running the football. That will open up downfield possibilities for Steve Smith, but they're not doing it.
Yeah, Stewart 4 carries, Williams 6 carries. Another guy who had been productive is tight end Greg Olsen. He'd been really good through the first 4 weeks, caught just 2 passes in this game. I don't think he had a target until the second half.
Amazing.
Let's go ahead and...
It's amazing. It's just when you're like, okay, it's time to give him love, every time he falls flat. At least LaFell had one play. I don't think he's dead, but they are light at receiver. Maybe get Lewis Murphy involved. I don't know what's going on here, but it's not good in Carolina.
The Bears destroyed the Jaguars in Jacksonville today, 41-3, and this Jaguar offense is really ugly to watch, John. Blaine Gabbert, 17 of 33, 142 yards, no touchdowns, 2 INTs on the day. Only had 1 pick on the season coming in, but did throw 2 today. But I think the lack of a passing game here, clearly an issue for Maurice Jones-Drew. 12 carries, 56 yards, only ran for 38 yards last week, runs for 56 today. Is Gabbert a real problem for MJD when they're trying to run the football?
Yeah, it's a big problem. Last year, he somehow managed to continue to get it done here, but it's not exactly happening here right now. So you got to be worried when they face off against a good defense and also a team that potentially can kind of take them out and control the football. So that kind of was the story today. The Bears ran it 33 times. Cutler had a pretty good day, 292 and 2 touchdowns, plus their defense is excellent. So he's another guy. I mean, boy, how far down do you downgrade him? It's hard when you do projections. I mean, we had him lower than usual this week, but I think he still cracked the top 10 because he's Maurice Jones-Drew. He did pop off one nice run, but this is a concern. There's no question, because they're just still not consistently getting him involved in the passing attack. Normally, you're looking at a guy like him like, okay, well, no matter what the game situation, he can help me, but not with Dirk Cutter gone. Mike Mularkey runs a very vanilla scheme, and they're not getting MJD the ball when they're throwing it from behind. I mean, Gabbert did throw it a decent 33 times, only 3 times to MJD.
For the Bears, Jay Cutler, 292 yards, a couple of scores on the day. 1 to Brandon Marshall, who was huge today, 12 catches for 144. He has now gone over 100 yards with a touchdown in 2 of his 5 games so far. But Matt Forte ran it well, looked good, looked healthier this week, 22 carries for 107. A little disappointed in Michael Bush. I thought he might have more of an opportunity to do something in this game. And then, of course, Armando Allen, John, comes in late and busts off the long touchdown run that I know a lot of guys like me who have Michael Bush were hoping that maybe he would have been that guy, but it just wasn't in the cards today.
Well, it sure as heck looked like a Michael Bush type of a game because you got to figure the Bears would be in complete control, which they basically were, that they'd move the ball, which they basically did. But I guess we need to pull back a little bit from Michael Bush. He's getting a couple of touches in the passing attack, which helps, 2 for 26. But you're right about Forte. I really liked him today. I'm disappointed he didn't do more, actually. He did run for 100. Not a ton going on in the passing game. I thought for sure he'd get about 130 total yards with a touchdown, pop one off, but that was not the case, unfortunately. The other story here is Alshon Jeffrey. Now, he did get banged up, so we'll have to check the status of that, and obviously we'll follow that. But we've been pimping him up a little bit simply because, look, we watch the games, we look at the snap counts. He looks good. He's played a ton of snaps. He's basically the number 2. He had a touchdown. I think it was either taken off the board. I think it was taken off the board. Either that or he just missed it, but then he did score. But the problem is Marshall is the ultimate target bogarter. I mean, come on. I mean, look, we love Marshall. We had him at 2 in a PPR league on our cheat sheet. 2. So certainly, I mean, somebody on our message boards I said something about Marshall that he's not elite, and they jumped down my throat. I was like, we did have him at 2 in a PPR league cheat sheet, but man, you want to talk about Humphrey Bogart, man, with the pass targets. Jeez. So that's a problem a little bit for Jeffrey. But if he's available, I'd say pick him up because he's a damn good player.
Tennessee Titans got destroyed today in Minnesota by the Vikings, 30-7. A really bad day of offensive football for the Titans. They had only crossed midfield, I think, twice by the middle of the fourth quarter. It was really bad today. They couldn't get anything going. Matt Hasselbeck threw it 43 times in place of Jake Locker, who, of course, did not play today. 200 yards passing, one garbage time touchdown late to Jared Cook. That kind of saved his day. But Chris Johnson, coming off 141 yards rushing last week against Houston, just 69 yards rushing in his other 4 games combined. It is really bad right now if you're a Chris Johnson owner. I mean, I guess you can sit the guy down, but in leagues with small roster requirements, John, I mean, is he a guy, do you even think about cutting him at this point?
Wow. It's a good question. It's viable. It's viable if you're. I'm trying to see. Let me see where we ranked him last week. I had to bump him up a little bit for God's sakes, but it's possible. It's amazing how bad this offense is, and I guess it starts with him. Yeah, we've got him at 28 last week. This is coming off a good game, so he'll fall further. Look, I think we said it on the podcast last week, Paul. If you got him after that nice game, get out there and sell. So hopefully a lot of people did because that was an opportunity last week with what he run for like $140. Yeah, it's god awful. Isn't it amazing? I mean, all off season, where I was enamored with this offense. I mean, Jake Locker and Cook and we love Kendall Wright and Nate Washington's so good and Kenny Bray. Like, you got to be kidding me. And it's dreadful. And the good news is, if we look for a silver lining, I don't think Jake Locker has to worry about a starting job once he returns.
Yeah, that's a good point. And another thing I think we can take away is that Kendall Wright clearly has a role in the offense. I mean, 9 receptions for 66 yards, which are both season highs for him. Kenny Britt did play in this game, which was a little bit of a surprise, but just 2 catches for 23 didn't really do much here.
Yeah, people were just, I don't know, I mean, I feel like we totally bailed on Britt and look, I'm a big Britt guy. I was last 2 or 3 years. I love Britt, but after that DUI and knowing the problems, we bailed. I mean, people were emailing us, how come you don't have Britt so high? And we told people, look, Kendall Wright's going to be the guy here in Britt's spot, and Britt's coming off an ACL. He's one and done with the discipline. I don't get it why people are like, I know he's Kenny Britt and all, but you got to realize that he's not the Kenny Britt that we remember from last year and the year before. He's pretty worthless right now. You mentioned Kendall Wright. He's always going to get these targets, I think. He's kind of garbage time guy because they use him very close to the line of scrimmage. They just get the ball in the hands quickly, get it to him in screen passes underneath quick routes, and for that, he is a little bit of PPR gold here, so I'd keep using him.
For the Vikings, Adrian Peterson, boy, I thought this game was going to set up really well for him. He carried 17 times for 88 yards, looked pretty good, but he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1, John.
I know. He popped off a 34-yarder that looked pretty explosive, but from what I saw otherwise, he looked fairly sluggish. And I'm sitting there thinking, I mean, he is Adrian Peterson and all, but I mean, I was very cautious with him this summer. I think we ranked him at 14 at running back, and I was just kind of checking it out, and I'm pretty sure going into this week he was 14. But boy, I don't know what to tell people out there. Just keep starting him. He's not injured. He looks okay. He's been relatively involved in the passing attack. It's a little weird though. That's 4 straight games. Scored a touchdown in a month, Paul.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say, but he's certainly valuable, and you should still consider him a top 10 back. There's no question. The question is now does he get better or worse? People I talk to who are really more experienced than I am, they kind of think he'll get worse. We'll see. I mean, he is a freak of nature. He is Adrian Peterson.
Christian Ponder threw for 258 yards, a couple of scores, ran for 31 yards, which you love to see if you're using him. Certainly he's viable in a 2-quarterback league. But Percy Harvin, boy, this guy just continues to get it done. They have so many different ways to get this guy the football. 469 total yards and a couple of touchdowns through the first 5 weeks. He's really just a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, he is an excellent football player. There's absolutely no question about it. We've always loved him. There's always been something that prevents me from just going nuts with the guy, whether it be a lack of snaps, whether it be the migraines, in and out of the lineup and all that, but we've never disputed the fact that he is a pretty special football player. But, Paul, did you know where he ranked, let's say, in a non-PPR at wide receiver going into today's game?
Tell me.
28th.
Wow.
Yeah. Just ahead of Kevin Ogletree. Yeah, because he hadn't scored a touchdown. So
yeah, right.
He's got that monkey off his back. So obviously everyone's rolling with Harvin. I mean, we're certainly ranking him high every week, and why wouldn't we? Because of the targets and all that, and what he's doing with Christian Ponder. As Ryan Matthews just has a spectacular touchdown here in the third quarter in the Sunday night game, Paul.
Wow, look really good on that one. As we continue on with Denver and New England, probably the marquee matchup of the day. Patriots win 31-21, and Tom Brady only 223 yards, 1 touchdown to Wes Welker, who has been ridiculously productive the last 3 weeks. Let's just track it over the last 3 weeks, John. 8 for 142 3 weeks ago, 9 for 129 last week. Today, 13 for 104 and that touchdown. With Aaron Hernandez out, he has clearly been the number one guy in the offense.
Yeah, no question about it. Now, the question is what happens when Hernandez returns, which he will, I think, for their next game, and then Julian Edelman. Have we reached a point of no return now that we can't revert to what we were seeing the first couple of weeks? Or do they go right back to their original plan, which, from all indications, was to phase him out a little bit? His production is certainly going to go down with Hernandez back. So I don't know if at this point you want to trade him. Probably not. Yeah. Because, again, we may have reached a little bit of a point of no return. And keep in mind, too, here's the other thing. 54 rushes for the team this week, Paul. 54.
Yeah,
I know they were grinding out a victory here. Ridley did fumble, but they are running the ball a little bit. So that was part of my problem with them. They're running it. We know that they're running it. Edelman seeing more snaps, and Hernandez getting a ton of targets. So those 3 items there were very big-time concerns. So the question is, again, has Welker just totally replaced himself to the forefront of this offense? I can't really answer that, but you may want to entertain it. I think kind of like Bo, I don't think he's untouchable. You probably want to hang on to him, but he's not untouchable. It's not unrealistic to trade high here on Welker because they'll continue to run it. Julian Edelman will be back, and, of course, Hernandez most likely in their next game.
Quiet day for Brandon Lloyd, quiet day for Gronkowski, who's dealing with that hip injury, but you mentioned it, 52 carries on the day. Ridley looks fantastic. Bolden is getting meaningful carries during the course of the game. I mean, both of these guys, I think, giving an element to this offense that they haven't really had in the past few seasons.
Yeah, and it's really tough. I wrote about this last week. It's really tough. I mean, we have really spun Ridley positively. He looks great, very powerful, a lot of juice. How do we rank him at like 8, though? Because it's just, I guess at this point we're going to have to, because there's another huge game for him. But it's very difficult when Brandon Bolden, who also looks damn good, he kind of looks like Ridley out there. They're built very similarly. Bolden is a power back, too. He's a very strong guy. You know, when Brandon Bolden's getting 14 carries and Woodhead's getting 7, and keep in mind a lot of that was late, but Bolden was in the mix the entire game. Of course, Vereen gets a vulture touchdown. It's kind of hard to just go all in on him, but maybe at this point we have to because he looks so good.
For the Broncos, Peyton Manning, 345 yards, 3 scores on the day. He has gone over 300 yards with multiple touchdowns now in each of the last 2 games, and clearly they did have to throw it a lot playing from behind in this game, and Demaryius Thomas was a beast with 9 for 188. Did not score, though, but Eric Decker, even though he only caught 4 for 21, at least he did get one of those touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all know that Thomas is really talented, and clearly he gets open more. He's better than Decker. There's no doubt about it. But a lot of his production has come on like screen passes and the like, which, hey, it does count, and we'll take it. We'll gladly take it. Decker, a little bit more of a route runner. But one thing I have noticed, and I got to admit about Decker, he's not gaining a lot of separation this year. So that is a little bit of a concern. We had Demaryius Thomas ranked 4th this week, so it's not like we weren't all in on him too. And we had him pretty high for the preseason. I definitely like Decker more than Thomas because I thought he'd get a lot of catches. I thought Thomas would be a little bit more hit or miss. But clearly Manning loves throwing to Demaryius Thomas because he's never had such a talented guy, whereas Decker, while fine, doesn't really totally command the ball. But that said, he gets targets, and he has had 3 solid games in a row here, and he always gets red zone targets. Decker had another one in this game other than his touchdown, so he's certainly solid. There's no question about that.
Willis McGahee, he had the big fumble late, which is unfortunate for him, but 14 carries for 51 on the day. Last couple of weeks, though, something we haven't seen a lot of from him. He's been catching the football, John.
Yeah, no, he has, and that's a good sign. It definitely helps. So 6 targets the last 2 weeks. Last week he caught all 6. This week he missed one, which was a very pivotal one on a 4th down play. But 5 for 51 is great. That's great stuff, though. Keep in mind he's not it's not like Brandon Jacobs. It's not Stonehands out there too, because he can catch the football. But this is big news for him. Now he did have a fumble, but he's a guy that you typically, in a game like this against a pretty good run defense, you're like, I don't know, not exactly feeling it here. But if he can continue this, then he's got almost no downside because other than the fumble, he did look good again. I mean, he continues to run really well.
Next game up, 49ers at home against the Bills, 45-3. This was never much of a football game, and Alex Smith only threw 24 passes, which seems to be about his norm, but when you're playing an opponent like Buffalo, you can turn those 24 passes into a 300-yard day. 3 touchdowns as well, 1 to Crabtree, who had a great day, 1 to Kyle Williams, 1 to Manningham. Vern Davis went over 100 yards on the day. But I want to talk about Frank Gore, who through the first 5 games of the season has 432 yards on the ground, 4 rushing touchdowns. I know Jacobs hasn't been a contributor here, but I think Gore is performing a little bit better than we all thought that he would.
No doubt at all. I mean, we had him at like 17. I wasn't certainly backing Gore in terms of go get him, that hardly. But I think the problem to me was you got Kendall Hunter. I was convinced he was going to get carries, which he is. Yeah. You got Brandon Jacobs, LaMichael James. I thought maybe might steal some of Gore's stuff here, but when you really think about it, they're smart. Obviously, LaMichael James has been a complete non-factor, and Jacobs got hurt, so he's been out. But they're smart because they're not overusing Gore. They're not using him in the passing game much. They've got other guys for that. And they're certainly using Kendall Hunter, who demands carries. I mean, this guy had 7.4 yards a carry in this game. He had a couple long runs, too. He looks great. Really good. Kendall Hunter's fantastic. So they're smart, and this is good news if you have Gore, because there'll be weeks where they need him, and there'll be weeks like today where they don't exactly need him, yet he still comes through, so maybe he'll stay healthy all year.
For the Bills, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 12 passing touchdowns heading into this game. and none today. You know, when you're playing the 49ers defense, I guess all bets are off, but Fitzpatrick just 126 yards passing, no scores on the day. Nobody worth using for fantasy in this game, but I want you to talk about Stevie Johnson if you can, because, you know, clearly he is their number one guy. But he hasn't had more than 61 yards receiving in a game yet this year. Now, the first 3 weeks of the year, he was scoring touchdowns, so we could overlook that. But is there something more going on here? Is there a problem with Stevie Johnson?
I don't think so. He doesn't run all that well. They really don't have a downfield passing attack. It's all run after the catch. They got to get the ball out of Fitzpatrick's hands, and he underthrows so many passes. He was picked at least one. Well, he only threw one pick. I'm surprised. I thought he would throw more. And it was an underthrown ball, and I think it may have been to Johnson toward the end zone, too. So I would keep using Stevie Johnson if you need him. It's possible you have a better option for, like, your third receiver, but for most people out there in fairly competitive leagues, you just keep rolling with him because he's healthy, and at the drop of a hat, he could score. So I would keep rolling with him. But we had Fitzpatrick as a guy to trade a couple of weeks ago. We saw that. I kind of saw this guy. Now, I know it's the 49ers, but it's just the writing's on the wall here for these guys to level off, and their backfield situation's a disaster right now. I mean, if you have both Fred Jackson and C.J. Spiller, you're just kind of hoping for one of them to get hurt. Preferably Jackson.
Preferably Jackson.
Yeah, I've got them both in one league, and I love Fred Jackson. I've interviewed him. He's a great guy. I kind of want to see him get hurt, quite frankly, for my own sake, because Spiller would do very well as the guy.
We only have a couple minutes left here, but we are watching the Sunday Nighter as we're doing this, and the Chargers winning in New Orleans 24-14. Drew Brees broke Unitas' record tonight with his touchdown to Devery Henderson early, who I know is a guy that you picked up and liked this week. You actually started him in our Sirius League. But offensively for the Chargers, Jackie Battle starts again in this game at running back. Ryan Matthews has gotten more touches and clearly has looked much better to this point. I mean, Jackie Battle, pretty much the definition of just a guy.
Yeah, we got this covered. I mean, I covered it this morning that Battle will probably start, but clearly Matthews is still well in the mix here, and boy, he can. I've always said this about Matthews. Boy, he can gobble up 100 total yards real quick. So you certainly feel a lot better about Matthews. Obviously, it's a week-to-week deal. He's got to stop with the fumbling, but it's so obvious that he's just ridiculously talented. So Battle has value. I mean, he'll get some touchdowns here. That's the thing. I don't think they're going to trust him inside the 5 or inside the 10 maybe, Matthews. So Battle does have some value here, but no question. Matthews was a guy, once we saw this happen last week, who was splashed on the homepage to trade for? Ryan Matthews.
Robert Meacham, who hadn't done anything all year, 3 for 67 and 2 touchdowns against his former team so far tonight. All right, we're just about out of time here, John, so we'll wrap it up. For John Hansen, I'm Paul Kelly. This has been Week 5 of the FantasyGuru.com Sunday Night Wrap-Up Podcast. Good luck the rest of tonight. Good luck tomorrow night, and we will talk to you next time.
Blog Talk Radio, where millions of hosts and listeners gather.